Hello all, this is Lysander with Parnassian Studios, here to give you an in-depth look at the GameEvent Sequencer. It's a new program we just released to assist game development projects that use large amounts of scripted scenes in their games. To learn more about how and why this program came about, or if you're not sure what situation it would be useful in, just check out our overview video on our website at parnassianstudios.com, on our Google Plus page, or on YouTube. Links will be provided in the description here. Okay, so here we are with a demo of our program. We made this to distribute to our beta testers, but it's only missing a few small things like the load functionality, so it's perfect for our demonstration. For those of you using the program for the first time, the help menu may be useful. It contains an about section with the creator and licensing details, but more importantly, a getting started page with all sorts of information on the various parts of the program and the terminology we use here. If you watch both videos, it's unlikely that you'll need it. There's also a ton of tooltips in the program to help you if you can't figure out how something works. We have them turned off here, but just go into the options and enable them and hover over an active control to get details on what the control does. And now that we have all the boring stuff out of the way, let's talk about the three managers that make up the core of the program. The first manager, the sequencer, is the data entry portion, and it's, well, arguably the reason for the program's existence. Sadly, as you can see here, you can't actually use it if you haven't made any prototypes yet. So let's move on to the prototype manager first. The prototype manager is where we make our blueprints, our design schematics for the types of events and event sequences that we have in our game. It's important to note here, if you haven't watched the overview video, that an event is an in-game message or a single action you want to take place in the game. It can be literally anything, from a dialogue box, a character movement, a sound effect playing, etc. An event sequence, on the other hand, is a series of events that happen one after another in a queue. This could also be called a scripted scene, where the player has little to no control over what's going on. In our prototype manager, we make the blueprints for these events and event sequences. We build them as data structures identical to the classes we've made for them in our game. The way that we do this without coding is by adding element objects to the prototypes. Each element is comprised of a label and a control that can accept user data, like a text box, a combo box, or a checkbox. We add an element for every piece of data that this event type requires to do its job. And then, in the sequencer, the first manager that we saw, we can simply duplicate this event type and make infinite copies of it easily and reliably with no coding involved. Now, you may have noticed that there are two element lists here. Common elements are the ones that exist for all event types. If you need ID numbers, display names, etc., this is where those will go. Unique elements, on the other hand, are the elements that only exist for the selected event type, like the dialogue being spoken in a dialogue event, or the sound effect ID in a sound effect event. Even if two events both have the same element, they aren't common unless every event shares them. For the programmers out there, think of common elements as being data inherited from a base game event class, while unique elements were not. When you first add a new piece of data to an event, you have to decide on a data type for that data. The options here are a bit more limited than the full version, but it's a good sample size. Bool is simply a switch, true or false, in the form of a checkbox, and 32 are whole numbers. Decimal are numbers that can have a decimal point in them. String is a word or a phrase, and list item is a bit special, and we'll talk about that later. Once you add an element, you can then name the element, write out the label, choose the position it's placed on the event page, how wide and how tall it is, depending on the type, visibility options, and the default value. Most of these should be pretty self-explanatory, but there's one conceivably confusing aspect. That's the parent-child relationship. Eventually, there are a few things we want to do with this, but for now, there's only one purpose. If you make an element a child of a bool or list item element, you can change the visibility to depend on the parent's selection status. This does not change the event's data in any way at all. The XML would be exactly the same. It's purely a visual clue to the person doing the data entry that this element is not important if another element has a certain selection. An example could be a bool value that determines if something should be automatic or manual. If it's automatic, then another piece of data, like a speed value, may become irrelevant. Again, this is only a visual clue within the program, like the position and size values, for instance, and it won't affect the data. So far we've been talking a lot about the event types, but we haven't really discussed the sequence types. Sequence types are a bit harder to explain because the differences between them is completely up to you. I like to think of the different types as the first level of the requirement sieve. And what I mean by that is there's a good chance that much of the data in the sequences are going to be about when and if the sequence is triggered. The location you're at, the progress in the game, your level, relationship statuses with other characters, etc. Anything that can cause a sequence to trigger or keep a sequence from triggering. The way that I use the different types for the sequences is related to that. There are some sequences in my game, for instance, that can trigger in any location, like basic dialogue sequences, while others can only occur in one place. The difference between these two is what kind of events can be included in the sequence. Like if I don't know exactly where it's going to trigger, I can't have character movement events. They might run into walls, run through other characters, whatever. I don't know anything about what's going on around it. For that reason, I've made a supported events list, as you can see here, where you can select the events that are possible in this type of sequence. Other than that, sequence and event types are mostly identical, and they can hold the same types of information. Be aware that you can easily get by with exactly one sequence type. You don't have to go out of your way to make more types if it isn't necessary. So now we understand how to make event prototypes and sequence prototypes, and using these, we can easily fill up the sequencer with a ton of data. So what's the third manager? The third manager is called the Content List Manager. The sole purpose of this is to create lists of data, like characters in the game, areas, items, etc. These lists should correspond to lists that you use in your game code. Typically, the names of the list can be anything, but the numbers, which are used like IDs or keys, are what has to match your in-game list data. Right now, it only uses integer values, but this may change in later updates. These lists and list items can then be used in the prototype manager in the form of the list item element types, which we sort of skipped over earlier. A list item element has all of the same options as the other element types, but has an option to select the list used as a source and the default selection within that list. So that's it for the prototype and content list managers. So let's go back and take a look at the main program, the sequencer. To make it a little easier to see how this works, let me put in a few example prototypes really quick. So here we are with these event types, a dialogue event, an emote event, which will make a little pop-up emote over the characters' heads, and a character movement event. There are two elements that are common to all of these, the ID number and the name of the event. I may use the ID in some way in the game, but the name is only for a display label, which I'll demonstrate soon. For content lists, I've made a list of characters and a list of emotes in the game. These are used for the unique elements that we've made. Now we head over to the sequencer, and I can show you how event sequences can be realistically, we'd also have to make some requirement decisions here, like how far in the story you have to be, benchmarks you have to have or can't have, the area you're in, etc. Let's keep it simple though. We have two sequence types, one made for sequences that can occur anywhere, and one where we'll know exactly where and how the sequence is triggering. In the former, we can choose between the dialogue and emote events, like you can see here, but in the latter, we can choose anything, which in this case includes a character movement event. This is because the latter, we know what's going on around our character. We won't run into anything if we move around. We'll make some sequences here, make names for the events as labels. You can see the labels in the list here changing when we change the names, and that's because we added these common elements to the event type's display list. If we wanted to change the order that they're shown in the list here, we just change where they are in the prototype display list, like so. Once we have the information we want in the sequencer, we've made all of the sequences we need, we can export the data to an XML file. Just go up to Export, choose the sequencer, and choose a save location, and we're done. Now, if your programmer makes a parser to import XML data into the game, the entire process from here on out can be automated.